Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and you're watching The Broken Meeple. This is a YouTube channel about board games where I give reviews, top 10s and my honest opinions, regardless of the consequences.
Get on with it!
So we're back with the top 100, and last time I did this was about 14 months ago, and yeah, it clashes with Essen, it's not good. I just can't get all those reviews done and the top 100 at the same time. It's just too much burnout. So I put it down to the vote and it was unanimous that everybody voted to do this 14 months later in 24 rather than do a quickie one in 23. And so a lot has changed since the last list. I mean, I'm not saying that the top 10 is completely different or anything, but I'm certainly going to say that there's been some shifts in terms of games going up and down this list. Some returning, some leaving, and it goes to show what just leaving a bit of time in between lists can do for this thing. So I did the usual that I do every time, which is to go onto the Pub Meeple website. So thanks to them for providing the resource. I go on there and I put in about 150 odd games and then I compare each one and see how it goes through the pub ranking system. Now I say 150 games. I essentially go, right, everything I've rated a 10, everything I've rated a 9 and a bunch of 8s. Not all the 8s because some 8s I just know would not make my top 100, but I try to pick as many as I can from the ones that were like, these were close to a 9 but they're kind of an 8 now. And obviously my ratings for games go up and down as time goes on, and I try to update these on BGG when I can, but it basically means that if your game is a 9 or a 10, chances are it's on my top 100 somewhere. But then that's not necessarily always the case, because yes, I might rate the games, I mean like a 9 or a 10 because as a game it really works, but it's got to be for my personal enjoyment. So, your game, like a little filler game like Vegetable Stock, for example, I'd say it's a 9 out of 10. I think it's one of the better filler games that you can get. But a game that I'm going to say is like my 100 favourite games of all time, probably not, but I still recommend people go out and get that filler. So it's definitely more based on my enjoyment rather than the critical part of everything doing these ratings. Now, looking at the last list, I've got it in front of me on a tablet here, so hopefully I can scroll in this and get everything I need to know. But for those of you who like the statistics front, we have 3 new returning games to the list that have previously not been on the top 100, or they've fallen off and they've come back. But in terms of the paradigm shift, 27 new games are on this list, which means 30 games fell off.
What?
30 games are no longer on my top 100. I mean, more games come out, I find games that replace other games, or games that I prefer to the ones I had before, but yeah, quite a few have fallen off the list, and the vast majority of them are in the bottom sort of half of the list. There's a couple that are in the higher areas where I've gone, yep, you know what, these can't be on the top 100 anymore, but yeah, the bottom half of my list is going to be pretty much unrecognizable from what it was before, so hopefully you'll get some enjoyment from there. Now, in terms of the format, previously I have done 10 episodes of 10 games, and that's just too much. I can't do that. It's too many videos to put out, too much to do. So I figured that because most people care more about the upper echelons of the list rather than the lower ones, I thought that I would speed through the lower half of the list a little bit quicker and focus more on the top lot. So I'm going to do kind of like a speed run in a sense through 100 to 80, well 100 to 81, and then 80 to 61, and then 60 to 41. They're going to be 3 videos in batches of 20 now, where I don't get the games off the shelf or anything like that. You just see the pictures and I go through it and just go through it nice and relatively quick. Not like speed run, not like those other type of videos where it's like 30 reviews in 30 seconds or whatever, but I'm going to try and speed through these and not take too long with them. And then I will either do a 40 to 21, or I might decide to do videos in 10 from that point, and obviously with greater focus on the ones as I get closer to my number 1. So that's kind of the format I'm going with. Hopefully that will suit you as well. Without further ado, well, all together now. My number 100 dropped 38 places from 62. I still enjoy this game. It's one of the few train games that I do enjoy. That is Whistle Stop from Bezier Games. This one has the map hexes mechanic, which is a bit like Tesoro, where all the networks go off in all sorts of different directions. I really enjoy that aspect of it, where you're laying all these different routes and you've got multiple trains and they can go off in all sorts of different routes. That's the bit I find the most fun. The whole idea of collecting shares and using the different towns for special abilities to get the resources is fine, I can take or leave that bit, but just building the routes and trying to get your train all the way across this map from A to B, whether you want to do it fast or whether you want to backtrack at times, sometimes you'll go through a few hexes and then come back on yourself. There's a lot of cool things that you can do, and I still really enjoy this one. It's a relatively smooth game. It doesn't get a lot of buzz, compared to a lot of Bezier's other stuff, or certainly a lot of other train games, but I still really enjoy this one. It sits on the shelf, and I look forward to playing it again. Alright, 99 is a new one to the list. I've only just reviewed this one, and that is Scholars. Specifically, Scholars of the South Tigris. Yes, the one that I reviewed in December has just made it onto my top 100. I did contemplate whether it had enough plays to sort of warrant being included on this list, but I did play it enough to give it a full review, which is a decent amount, and I've played it since. And yeah, I do really enjoy this game. You know, it's one of many, yes, one of many Garfield games that I do enjoy. And this one had you translating different scripts from languages to Arabic, but the way you did it was you had dice and workers, and you were mixing them together to create colors for the actions that you were doing. Like, I need to level up on this technology track for orange. Right, well, I need to make orange. Right, I need yellow and red. Well, I got a yellow worker, I got a red die, put them together, there you go. And it's stuff like that. But it's got the usual trend of Garfield games having relatively straightforward rule sets, but still being complex enough to have a decent amount of meatiness in it. There's a little bit of luck of the draw with the dice, you know, that tends to be a little issue at times. But, you know, certainly I prefer other Garfield games. Spoiler alert, you're going to get more on this list. But I still thought this was pretty sweet, and it's just made it into the top 100 despite having only really reviewed it last month. So, pretty good going there. Okay, my 98, again, new to the list, is, might be within sight, actually. I think it is within sight. Yeah, it's within sight. You know, this one is Uri Rosenberg, and it's a weird theme, but an interesting one. But it's very different in a way to some of his other farming-esque games, and that is Atawa. This one here. Atawa is all about fruit bats of Ghana, and the idea is that you have these resource tracks where, as you put things on these cards that represent like little grid areas that you can farm on, the resources come off your board, and this dictates how much resources you produce of that type, like fruit or trees or milk, that kind of thing. But the idea is that as you spend resources, they come off your tiles on, well, say tiles, your grid cards, onto your board again. So you have to sort of play this weird balancing act with taking resources off this board, putting them on your map, and getting the most efficient means of production while trying to feed your people, as always. I mean, Uri Rosenberg was starved as a child, obviously. This is why every single one of his games involved feeding your people in some respect. But this is a very smooth mid-Euro game. I mean, for the most part, it's worker placement with some resource management. Two good things to have in combination. But the spaces are simple, the rules are straightforward. There's a tiny bit of fiddliness with making the bats go off at night and getting new stuff and putting them back. You know, that can be easily forgotten. But for the most part, just collecting the different cards to build up your little farm areas and then managing the resources is very straightforward. It glides at a good pace, doesn't take too long, 2 hours with 4 players. You know, it's a good length, and this has gone down well with people I've shown it to. It's still a solid one, sits on my shelf, and even works solo as well. So what else do you want to know? Alright, 97, again, new. So a lot of new games are on this batch of 10, I must say. Now, this one I have reviewed recently. It came out it came out a while ago, but I reviewed it in about September time. And this is a story-based adventure game, but it's one of the simplest ones out there, and that is Lands of Galzir. Lands of Galzir came from, I forget who the company is. Oh no! Snowdale Design helps me to do my research, and this one is essentially you basically just build up a character from one of 4 different anthropomorphic animals. It's that kind of setting, and you use an app and you just go off and do your thing. It's a sandbox choose your own adventure game that doesn't really have an end. You start off with your character, but then what you decide to do is entirely up to you. It's just a Zen style game where you can just jump in, have a game, go through a fair few adventures, wrap it up for the session. Did you get as much reputation as you should? Yay or nay? Whatever. You've changed the map a little bit, but for the most part, you just go off again and find more adventures. All these different cards come out of the deck, like the tray, to simulate kind of like a notice board of quests, and they have different stages. So depending on how well you do in the first initial ones may dictate whether you have to scrap those entirely for the future, or you actually get to find that person again or come across the next stage of that quest. Like, right, we've done the initial sort of heist bit, right, now we need to take this item to somewhere else. Right, well, we took that item to somewhere else, it didn't go too well. Well, now we need to go find this person. And you know, these things got to build on top of each other, but the system's really easy. It uses dice, a brilliant app, and it's just one of those nice adventure games. Check out my review for a bit more detail. Alright, next one up, 96 is also, again, new. This is going to be a recurring theme for the first batch of 10. But this one, I'm surprised, has not been on the list beforehand. It's down there on the AEG section, and I guess maybe because I just didn't play this one enough in the past, but with the expansions being out and, you know, with AEG giving me a review copy, I figured, you know what, let's get a chance to play this a bit more. And Space Base has managed to make it on my top 100. I do think this is a solid game, an alternative to Catan, which, I'll say spoiler alert, Catan isn't on my top 100 anymore. I still really like Catan, okay? But I think Space Base is better overall as a Catan-like game. Yes, you use that trading aspect, but the abilities with the ships and how you can build up your display of them is more interesting, I think, than the standard Catan game, although maybe the expansions would change that. But, you know, with Space Base, there is a caveat, you know. I don't want to play too many of the weird expansion rules. It just makes it a bit too complicated, and you have to play Lightspeed variant, okay? You have to play that variant to quicken the game up and give you something at the start, because otherwise the game drags on too long. But with that in mind, you can have a pretty good free-player game of this and still have a pretty good time with not a huge amount of downtime if you've built your ships up so that you do stuff on other people's turns. I enjoy it. It's cool. It looks quirky. It's something different. And yeah, it made my list. Okay, 95 is not a returning game, nor is it a new game. This one has actually dropped 29 places, and it's in danger of falling off the top 100. Not because I don't like the game, but because I just never really get to play it. Because really, the only time I play this one is when my friend wants to play it. It's one of his favourite games, if not his actual favourite game. And when he does bring it out, I'm usually busy doing something else. That is Argent the Consortium. This is a solid game, I think level 99 games, and it essentially has you running effectively like a Hogwarts-style anime school. The dean has gone missing, and so all of you are trying to be the dean of this new university. But the teachers on the committee vote in different ways, and you are trying to figure out what they are voting on and try and meet that criteria as the game goes on. You place your mages out as workers, and you can learn spells with different abilities, get supporters with different abilities. You can, you know, get items that you can consume, like potions and stuff. You name it, this game has got a crap ton of variety. It is so much variation, particularly with the expansion. But it's a meme game. It's one of the few meme games I actually still enjoy, and it certainly is not the easiest one to teach new players, so usually I prefer to play this with people I know, which again, my friend has the game and I usually play it with him. So is there a point me keeping it in the collection? I don't know. I mean, I've got some upgraded bits for it, and it certainly is a fun game, but how often do I really play it without him? I have to think about that. But that being said, when I do play it, it's a good laugh, it's something different, it's very unique, and you know, the amount of variety and the theme very strong, so it's definitely one for me. 94 is a new game. It's a beautiful game, nature themed. I really enjoy these. The expansion has a cute little otter on the cover. It's so lovely. And that is Meadow. Meadow is a nice little card game where you're just building up this big tableau of cute little animals and ecosystems, and you're trying to match the symbols, but it's all to score victory points at the end of the day. There's all sorts of gorgeous artwork in here. It is one of the most beautiful games in existence, and you know, with the Rivers expansion, you've got this lovely track that you can move along and all the river creatures. It's so beautiful, it's unreal. That being said, you need to play it with fewer players than most, because it does drag on if you play with too many. In fact, I think I actually came up with a house rule. I think it's in my top 10 house rules video, where basically I remove one of the selection tiles for every player, especially if I'm playing with the Rivers expansion. You have to do that, otherwise the time length just goes ridiculous. Oh, so your BGG stat score might be slightly unbalanced as a result. Who cares? I want the game to finish. But it's a solid little game. I mean, you play it solo, it's good fun. You play it with 2, maximum 3 players, and you'll have a really good time. Try and play it with 4, and you're in for a world of hurt. But it's still good fun for the most part. It's just, I really love the artwork, and I like the simplicity of the actions, and it's just nice to play a good Zen-like nature game. Alright, 93. Again, we're on the nature front here, and this is a, well, it's technically 1 to 4 players, but it might as well be 1 to 2. It's solo or 2 player, 3 and 4 shouldn't even really count, and that is Canopy from Weird City Games. It's I've just said Meadow is one of the most beautiful games out there. Canopy could be one of the top 5 most beautiful games out there. It's so gorgeous. Vincent Dutrait's artwork is all over this, and all the cards look amazing. The cover I would like to have on the wall. It is that good. This thing just pops on the table, but Playing it with 3 to 4 players doesn't really work. It's predominantly a solo or 2-player game, and it's very simple. You're getting these cards in order to gain points either from having tool trees or having like the right sets of these different animals. But the mechanic is that you have these 3 like columns of cards or 3 piles, and you look in a pile and go, do I want this pile? Nope. Put another card on top of it, look at the next one, and you have to pick one of these 3 piles. So you're adding cards to it if you skip it, which might be giving your opponent something they really want, but there are negative cards as well. So maybe you're like, I really need that extra cockroach and maybe that little fox, but if I take those, I'm gonna have to deal with a disease and a fire. Is that a good thing? And it's just a simple like a decision process like that. But there's a lot of variety in the cards, and annoyingly there's a giant tarantula picture in this, which I refuse to play the game with. It's so scary. I mean, yes, I say the artwork is beautiful. You can't make spiders beautiful, okay? It's not possible. I don't care if you name it Charlotte. It doesn't make it beautiful, all right? Lovely little game, small box, not a lot of people talk about it, but seriously, you want a good solo or particularly a good 2-player game with beautiful artwork. There are few I can recommend more than Canopy. Right. 92, I never thought this would make my top 100. This is insane, but I can't deny that I really do enjoy the game. But there's a caveat. I enjoy it on the app. This is pretty much app only based, because as much as I would enjoy it in person, I have no intention of buying the actual game because it takes too long to play with multiple players. Playing this with 3 or 4 takes an eternity, and I don't often get 2 players at the table, and you can't play it solo. Bring the app in though, and Through the Ages becomes a really solid game. And I had to put this on my top 100 because it's one that I go to when I go on journeys. I traveled to Iceland, I've traveled to, I've traveled to Iceland, I've traveled to Scotland, I've traveled to Ireland. When I do these short hops, I think I did one around Europe as well. When I do these short little hops, then Through the Ages is perfect, because it takes me about 60 to 90 minutes to get through a proper game of it if I'm playing with, AIs on there, because usually I have to kind of half relearn the game when I come back to it, and obviously I'm not an expert on Through the Ages. I can't beat AIs on hard, I have to play them on easy. Maybe medium I can do, but I'm a bit of a beginner when it comes to tactics in Through the Ages. But it's a good fun Civ game. I love the card display, I like the micromanagement of resources. The war aspect, that's the bit I wish it was toned down a little, but when I'm playing against the AI it's not too bad. The games can be done in less than 4 hours, thankfully, when you play it on the app. And it's just such a good app that it pretty much kills the entire physical game.
I'm throwing you away.
By the time I've set off from the flight and then landed, I've already I've played through my game. It's like, right, victory point scored and I'm good. We are now landing in Ireland. Oh, whoa, okay, cool, and suddenly the whole journey's gone past. It's a great time sink. So yeah, it does well. Not quite as well though as my 91, which is the first returning game to the list. This one is a game that I have said I do prefer to Through the Ages, although just, this one is pretty much Through the Ages if you had worse artwork, but worked better for multiplayer, and that is Nations. Nations is still a really solid game. I enjoy it. It's got similar mechanics to Through the Ages, the micromanagement of resources and the card display that you take with different technologies and all the Civ stuff. But the thing I like with Nations is A, you can play it with 4 players in less than 3 hours. That's something you cannot do with Through the Ages. And secondly, I like the way that the resource management works, because you have workers that you place on the cards that represent how much they're producing. But you can upgrade these buildings to make them produce more as time goes on, or you can, start wars and force other players to, deal with the fact that, oh, if I don't do the war, I'm going to lose a few resources. How do I get around this? It's very tight, there's certainly not a lot of resources in the game, and with the expansion, you've got all these different nations that you can play with asymmetric setups, which is always a great thing to have. I think in Through the Ages you never have a asymmetric setup. I think you're always the same, and that's fine for that game, but it is nice to say that I am America and I have this setup, I am China, I have this setup, and that sort of thing is really cool. I do wish it had better artwork though. I would love to see, I think it's been long enough that a 2.0 of this game would be brilliant. To have a publisher come in, 2.0 this game up, give it really solid artwork, give it a component upgrade, I'd be all over it. Right, into the next bunch of 10. Whew, watch the throat. This is gone up 10 places actually from 100. I'm surprised it's gone up because I haven't played it that much since the last list, but I have played it, and yeah, it is still my 4th favourite Lacerda game, and so as you can see, I have 4 Lacerda games here, and it's my 4th favourite. So yeah, spoiler alert, the other 3 will be on this list, but which one is my 4th? Well, it's the same one that's always been my fourth, and that is Lisboa. Lisboa is... I don't really care too much about the historical setting of it, you know, I mean, the first time I got taught it, the guy spent about 45 minutes teaching me the history of the game and how it works on the mechanics. It's like, get on with it! I need to play and finish this game in the next day, please. But, you know, this one I don't really go into it for the theme. The mechanics, though, pretty solid. I like the city building aspect with the grid, you know, it feels fulfilling to get those bonuses. I like the way that the different actions work, where depending on how you play the card, you either get the top action with the court or the 2 at the bottom. But the cards make this game for me. You've got the clergy bonuses with all those little tiles, which I like, but these cards, the portfolio that you have, where you play them at the top or slot them in at the bottom, and you know, depending on which end you play them means that you've got a different effect. So they're multi-use cards, and you know, you can gain more cards as the game goes on, they get more powerful. And I love that tactical choice of going, well, I played this card, gets me a bit of influence, lets me do that, that's pretty cool, but oh, I like that card there, you know, I'm gonna have that at the end of the round. And you always get a new card. It's not like you have to do a separate action to draw more cards. You always get another one, so that bit's handled for you. It looks good, you know, the artwork in it fits the style of Lisboa. It's a little hard to see certain things in places, but I still enjoy this one. It's just a bit of a mission to learn. The rules aid is a little bit insane. This was kind of the start of when Lacerda started overcomplicating his games.
This is light.
And making them a little bit too fiddly. I mean, we went into, where do we go? From On Mars to Weather Machine. I mean, yeah, you know, they got a little bit fiddly after that point. Even Inventions, you know, has a fair few fiddly bits to it. But yeah, you know, Lisboa was kind of that turning point, and it doesn't quite go too far for my liking. All right, 89 is down 8 places. It's supplanted, well, it's not supplanted, it's higher than another racing game I used to love called Snowtails, which is no longer on this list. I mean, it's probably in my like 120s or something. It's still really good, but Downforce is still one I get a kick out of. It's so simple to teach and set this game up. It takes no time at all to play, no time at all to set up and take down, and yet I can play this with 6 players, and I actually want to play this game with 6 players. Most games I don't. Even more so the fact that I pimped this game up with some of those little Mario things you got from Mario Kart Gamer, so it looks like you're playing a Mario Kart game as you're playing Downforce, which is just great to have like Yoshi against Mario and Bowser. Annoyingly, I need to replace the Metal Mario with Shy Guy. Unfortunately, getting the Shy Guy piece is nigh on impossible if you want to not spend £1 million on it. It's the one figure that I didn't get, and I wish I did, but oh well, Metal Mario will just have to substitute for Black, I guess, but not much else I can do about it. But, you know, with all the maps, expansion maps I've got a lot of variety of where to play. I mean, I never play the 2 beginner maps now. I like to play the one with the figures of 8, the ones where you sort of go in a loop and you can potentially sort of collide with each other. That's really cool. But yeah, you've got one with ramps, you've got one with safari animals. It's a solid racing game with a sort of finite card system to use for pretty much everything. The bidding, the movement, and all sorts. It certainly can be quite mean at times, but like I say, it's a quick 60-minute racer that you get done and done with, and I like that sort of thing. 88 is a new one to the list, and I like deduction games. Deduction games are really cool. I like that brain burniness where the rules aren't complicated, but what you've got to do in the game is complicated, and it makes you think. And this one has a simple premise, and the amount of times I see people fail this one in the sense that they actually make mistakes compared to other deduction games is quite high, which is probably a good thing. It shows you got to think hard. And that is the Lost Code. This one came out as a Kickstarter. It was a replacement for something called Think Straight, which was a decent deduction game, but the component quality was god-awful and dire.
It does look like she was beaten with an ugly stick.
You're essentially trying to find out the values of these different colours on these tiles. But to do so, dice are rolled, and then you have to basically use the dials to come up with a kind of estimate of how much you think this combination of colours will add up to from the ones in front of you. And so you're trying to basically eliminate the false numbers so you can work out what it is you've got. And you take the dial and it could have a range. It could literally be just a 2-number range. It could be a 10-number range. But you do the estimate. People tell you if you're correct or too low or too high. And then based on this information, you start working out what stuff's in front of you. But you score victory points during the game for using the smaller range numbers. So there's 2 aspects to the scoring. The amount of times I've played this game with people, and myself included, we make mistakes where we get to the end and think, I know what this is. It's fine. It's great. This is a 5. Wait a minute, it isn't? Where did I go wrong? Where did I go wrong? I want answers.
Wait, my cheating unit malfunctioned.
This happens all the time, yet the rules are straightforward. This one doesn't get a lot of buzz because frankly it just came out on Kickstarter. I guess nobody really bought into it, and I don't think I've even seen a retail release for it. So this is one that's not going to be played by a lot of people. But if you get a chance to try this and you like deduction games, seriously, give Lost Code a try. Next one up is Heat Pedal to the Metal on my 87, new to the list. You know, just a bit above Downforce in terms of its enjoyment, but certainly when you play with a lot of players, it's like, okay, have you had some experience with this before? Because otherwise we're going to be here for a while. It can certainly drag on. But the new Days of Wonder release is good fun, simple little deck building mechanic, well, sort of deck building mechanic with the cards that you've got, and you just play the cards, you zoom around the track, couple of laps, and you're done. You know, nice and simple. Can take a little bit long with a lot of players, but it looks gorgeous on the table. The garage module where you level up the cards and get the asymmetric cards to everybody else, really cool as well, but I don't get to use that as often. Sadly, I tend to end up playing this with new players and therefore I don't want to overcomplicate the game for them. But we've got an expansion on the way with 2 new maps and a couple of new tweaks. It's got a brilliant solo mode where I can compare all the AIs. It's just a solid racer all round. Right, we are done with brand new games to the list. I mean, what have we had already? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 new games to the list already in this bottom, what, like 15 games, if that. So yeah, there's been a bit of a paradigm shift as you can see, but for the rest of this particular section, no more new games. This one has dropped 3 places from 83. It's 86 now, big whoop. It's probably one of my favorite, I would say fillers. It's a little bit too long for a filler, but in terms of betting games go, it's definitely one of my favorites, and it's Long Shot the Dice game. Long Shot the Dice game has you betting on a horse race. It's just 1 lap, but you can buy the horses. They've all got special abilities. You're dice rolling in order to move the horses, but you're betting on them to win, and you can sort of keep making bets as the race goes on up to a point. And there's a couple of little other mini games that you can do, but it's condensed down into this very simple rule set, which is effectively a roll and write, literally a roll and write. I mean, why it's called the dice game, I don't get it. And it just enables, you know, a decent amount of players to sit around and have a good fun like horse race, because horse racing always gets a lot of tension with, oh, who's going to finish, oh, he's catching up, he's coming back, hey! You know, and it creates a lot of those moments. There's been lots of tense finishes that can decide a game, and it's not always just necessarily about your horse winning. I mean, it depends on betting and you know, other things that people have done, but it's just a good little fun romp. You know, it comes in a small box, it's well designed, it's well produced, and it got a lot of buzz before I got a chance to play this one. But I think I can't remember if I reviewed it or not, or maybe I just talked about it on a podcast, but I feel like I reviewed it, I don't know. But either way, I really enjoy this one. It sits on the shelf and I like to bring it out whenever I can.
And I must say, I think it's very sporting of them to enter a 3-legged blind horse the other side.
Next up, we have got, yes, this has dropped 22 places from 63, and this is not so much a cheat. It's shuffled a little bit in the list because of the recent one that I am playing at the moment, which is the Horizons expansion for Imperium. This is what this slot is. Imperium is a really cool, complex deck builder game. You take control of a civilization, and through deck building, you have to try and play specific cards in order to cycle through your deck fairly quickly, in order to unlock these new other cards into your deck, and then eventually get development cards, which are really good scoring opportunities or really powerful abilities. But all these different civilization decks function very differently. They have unique cards to them. You know, they may be like 1 or 2 cards, 2 or 3 or something that overlap other decks, but for the most part, you have a card or like a bunch of cards that are all yours. They're unique, and I love that in deck builders. And the idea is that the deck building isn't just simply a case of play 5 cards, do what it says, and no. You get free actions, you get so many exhaust abilities, and you have to try and think, well, what is it I need? I need to play this, but and then I also need to grab that card. But if I do I have the resources? How many cards do I want to discard and draw? Well, if I discard this many and draw that, I'll get my next card out of my nation's deck. But hang on, am I bloating my deck too much? Perhaps I should keep it thin and like hang around in Barbarian state for a while before I go to Empire. And there's a lot of cool aspects like that. Now, I am reviewing the Imperium Horizons box, and so far, same sort of cool gameplay, But there are some problems I have with its production where I'm like, you know, they should have sorted this out by now. But overall, I still really enjoy the gameplay of this. But because I waited so long before I played it again, because I wanted to learn the rules from scratch, it has dropped a bit because this hasn't got to the table because of the complexity and the poor, shoddy rulebook that the original version had. That being said, the rulebook in this new version is a lot better, but it's still not perfect, and certainly there is still that little hurdle you have to cross. Hence, I didn't really want this to be any higher than where it is in the list, but I still really enjoy this game. It's just, you know, like a lot of Buckle and Turksy combo games, Voidfall maybe, it takes a little bit of investment to really get going. Next up on 84, down 27 places. Still really enjoy this, but there's just been a lot of great games, and this is Ticket to Ride. I mean, Ticket to Ride I still really enjoy. Now, that being said, I don't want to play USA very much. I don't particularly like Europe, you know, and some of the basic maps I'm not a fan of. I want to play the funky, cool maps. I want to play, you know, the Pennsylvania and UK pack is the best. I want to play the Japan map. I want to play, you know, Africa for a little bit of cutthroatness. India is a cool little map. You know, what other ones there? France, I like that one where you're building up the different color tracks, you know, the Old West. There's a lot of cool maps out there. The main thing I don't like in Ticket to Ride map-wise is the ones with tunnels. I think tunnels, they're just a horrible luck element that you really don't need in the game. And I certainly don't like the, you know, the like Europe map particularly, because Europe has not only the tunnels, but then it also has the stations mechanic, which is like, oh, did you want any tension in the game? Well, there's no tension anymore because you've got these stations, they get past all that. So Europe's just not a map I particularly like, especially if you don't put the expansion to it in it with the cards, because I think the base set Europe tickets are unbalanced. You know, they're not balanced. There's some that are just way better than others. But that being said, that's a different side of things. Playing the decent Ticket to Ride maps still makes this a game I really enjoy. And I know some people are like, oh god, Ticket to Ride again? But I still really enjoy it. I own pretty much all of it, I think, with some upgraded trains and that. And yes, I was not too, shall we say, positive about Ticket to Ride Legacy, but you might want to check out my 2 videos I did for that, the non-spoiler and the spoiler review, to find out why. And I still stand by it. I still stand by the low rating I gave it. Now, that being said, low rating still didn't make it a bad game, because my rating scale doesn't go bad until you get to the really low numbers. But suffice to say, people are hyping it up like crazy, and I'm like, you might want to temper your expectations down a bit. I don't know. I think people are forgiving some foibles of that game a bit too much, but I might say, that's a different story. The Legacy game does not impact my rating of this one. It's still in my top 100. I still really enjoy it.
Lies made baby Jesus cry.
Okay, 3 more to get through. This is my 83, down 41 places from 42. It just doesn't hit the table as much as it used to, but that's not the fact that I dislike the game and the expansion made this game a lot better. It's just haven't had the time to get it played, and there's been a lot of other really good games, and that is Star Wars Outer Rim. The expansion really improved this game, and you're probably thinking, why isn't it higher? Well, this is a game I predominantly want to play solo because of the amount of time it can take with more players, and so, you know, it's whether I've had the time to bring it out solo. You know, there's a decent amount of rules to learn. It certainly isn't the shortest game in the world. It takes a fair bit to set up, although the folded space insert, oh my god, is that folded space insert mandatory for this game. You need that insert to play this game. But, you know, I still really enjoy it. It is a good Star Wars themed game with all the bounty hunters and all that side of things, but the expansion made it easier to traverse the map. It gave you unique paths to victory. It gave you obviously more cards. The card decks needed bulking up. It pretty much is mandatory to get that expansion even from the get-go, frankly. I think it's like that essential. But I still really enjoy this. It's a, you know, it's a very thematic Star Wars game that, you know, just has you taking your bounty hunter and deciding, well, you know, I want to get some cool gadgets, some cool weapons, maybe upgrade my ship. Should I do that mission? Should I do that mission? Should I go hunt this dude? Should I go recruit this person as an ally? It's a sandbox game where you tell your own experiences as a bounty hunter, and it's just really cool. Drips with theme, you know, really nice. It like I say, it's dropped, but that's just because of getting it to the table is a bit more of a hurdle. But still really enjoyed this one. In fact, I'm kind of surprised it did fall as much as it did. Maybe it was a bit too high last year, I don't know. It could have been maybe I'd played the expansion and that upped it a bit. Who knows?
This is the way.
82, dropped 39 places. Still really enjoy this one. It's just there's a lot of good games out there. Still one of my favorite trick-taking games, and that is The Fox in the Forest. And this could be the competitive or the co-op mode, whatever, take it or leave. I mean, both of them are good and both of them are on my shelf. This is just a really cool trick taker with a twist. The co-op one has you working together to, you know, extract these different crystals or berries or whatever they are, but you have to basically get in sync with your opponent thinking, if I play this card, will you know to play this card so we can move this over here and get that crystal off? You know, it's got the cool abilities as well. But the competitive one has a really cool scoring mechanism where, you know, if you have to sort of aim to get a certain amount of tricks in order to get the most points, but if you get too greedy, you'll lose a ton. And if you kind of shoot the moon and try to get barely any tricks, you can also score a lot of points then. So it's this tug of war with you and your opponent as you're kind of trying to see, am I shooting the moon and trying to get 3 or less tricks, or am I winning too many tricks? I need to slow down. Uh-oh, the opponent's trying to make me win lots of tricks. You know, and this, you know, you play this for multiple rounds, and it's just a really solid little game and looks really pretty as well. Although, to be fair, these two could switch places as easily as that. And finally, my 81 dropping 35 places from 46 to 81 is another trick-taking game, probably the most unique trick-taking game that there is out there, and that's saying something, but it was an innovative idea and it worked, and that is The Crew. The Crew being a co-op trick-taking game where you have to work together with your teammates to try and fulfill little challenges that each scenario pips at you of varying difficulties. The Mission Deep Sea is the one you want to get, because Mission Deep Sea, you know, tweaks the rules with the whole challenges system of how they're determined in the scenario, and it's a lot more varied, a lot more simpler to deal with, and I really think Mission Deep Sea is the one to go for, not the search for Planet 9 or whatever it is. You know, definitely get the Deep Sea one. I think they might be doing another one, I'm not sure, but really they don't need to. But this is just a really cool trick taker. Now, it's probably dropped because of getting it to the table, because the problem is that this is definitely one you want to play with trick takers who know what they're doing. It's like, I want to play this with people who understand how to play a trick taking game. If you're new to trick taking, playing a crew, it's probably not a good idea, because you in the group are responsible for helping us get through this. And if you don't know what you're doing with a trick taking game, you're not going to make the right decisions, and it's going to frustrate people. But, you know, if people are familiar with the mechanic, then getting 3 or 4 of you in a group to play this is really good fun. Really enjoy this one. And that is my 81. Whew. My throat. You know, my throat's healing, but man, talking about 20 games in a row is pretty intensive. But there you go, that's my 100 through to 81. I mean, there's a lot of new games there. You know, 1 returning game. What are we looking like for the next batch of 20? The other 2 returning games will be there. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 new games. So not that many new games, and that's 6 new games including the 2 returning ones. So you're going to see a lot of stuff that you've seen before, but you might be surprised on how far some of them have dropped or shifted. So, you know, you have that to look forward to on the next batch of the top 100. So that's it for me. I'll see you on the next video. And if you like what you see, then please thumb this up on YouTube and let me know your comments below about all the games I've mentioned. Do you like them? Do you hate them? I'd like to know your thoughts and what you think of them. Until next time, though, feel free to check more content that I have done, including, I don't know if it will release before this one or not, a top 10 drafting games list that I did for closed drafting games. Maybe that will come after the fact. You can check it out then. But also the review I've done for Raising Robots. That one is doing quite well. And if you want to hear me sort of say a little bit about what I've been doing and future plans for the year, then by all means check out the Q&A I did at the start of the year. So take care, and remember, regardless of whether you like or dislike the items on this list, they're still only games. So take care, and I'll see you next time.